I don't want to be right. Good rising, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. I am Tayla Andre. Waking up with Tayla Andre has absolutely nothing to do with the time of day we link up, but about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. Today is the day that the Lord had made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And I just claim myself to be the winner. That's what I'm going to do at 2 a.m. with me and my whole family. I won. Yo, your president is crazy, y'all. Like, your president is bat crazy. We have a dope show for you. I said this 1,000,001 times, and people want to act like I was crazy. So Hillary won popular vote, but yet Donald Trump still remained our president. Why? Because we have the Electoral College, and all 55 million, 75 million Americans that vote means absolutely nothing except for popular vote when the actual people who determine who the winner is the Electoral College and the delegates of the Electoral College. Those 539, 536. I woke up, so I try to stay up as long as possible. And I went to bed because I was not, I was not waiting for that. And then I woke up at the ass crack of dawn, and we were still at 219 and 109. So right now, as of 11:02 a.m., Joe Biden is at 238. It needs 270 to win. Donald Trump is currently at 213, and we still are waiting for Nevada, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, which has 20 electoral votes. And these are the battleground states. Michigan has 16, Wisconsin has 10, Nevada has 6, and Georgia has 16. I don't know if I said this already. North Carolina has 15, and Alaska has 3, and we're still waiting. But with Joe Biden at 238 and Donald Trump at 213, the truth of the matter is either party could win. And so I saw a meme last night, and I have to say that it really does sit with my soul. The fact that with everything that has been happening and everything that is going on in the last 4 years, there are 62,107,287 people that think that this MF should be the president of the United States of America still. So while your coworkers are on Zoom talking about Black Lives Matter, 67 million Americans don't care about your black ass or your black life or your black child or your black business. 67 million Americans. That's not 67 million Southerners. That's not 67 million Southwesterners. That's 67 million Americans that work with you in your company, in your corporations, in your organizations. I want to know how y'all really feel. What's going on? The truth about to tell us how we need to go ahead and completely get off the grid, eat and drink and smoke what we grow, that we need to tap into solar energy. The truth about to tell us, like, y'all over here voting because your vote really doesn't matter. All 67 million Americans, it doesn't matter, because these electoral votes is what really matters. And he wouldn't be lying. Baby, how do you feel? How do you feel? Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. 617-28, what the hell is my damn number? 617-459-0041. Feel free to call me because we can Bluetooth this in. I want to know, like, I really want to know how you feel, because I could tell you how I feel. Yesterday, prior to voting, the way that I felt was I did not, for anybody who reads books, I felt like I was at the last chapter of a book and I didn't want to read it because if I read it, it meant that it was finished. And so that's how I truly felt when it came to voting. Like, I didn't want to vote because then it meant that it was done. Like, it was over. This is really who and how we end this now. I'm so hurt, y'all. My feelings is really hurt. My emotions, I'm super emotional because, like, I hate Joe Biden more than anybody, more than any Republican. I can't stand his ass. But I understand the threat to democracy, and I don't understand why 67 million other people don't understand that. In other news, Alabama, this was really crazy to me, actually. Alabama is a weirdo state to begin with, but Alabama Amendment 5, the Stand Your Ground Rights in Franklin County Churches measure. The Amendment 5, Stand Your Ground Right in the Franklin County Churches measure was on the ballot in Alabama as a legislatively referred constitutional amendment on November 3rd, 2020, and it was approved. What did this mean? A yes vote means that you support amending the Alabama Constitution to state that individuals have a right to stand their ground and may use deadly force in self-defense in or defense of another person within churches. And so let's take this historically, okay? So once upon a time, historically, just think about Rosewood for a second. Even though we know the bombing of the 4 little girls in Birmingham, Alabama, even though we know that there were plenty of people that were locked in and burnt in churches, that at some point in time, Alabama said, listen, when you're in church, this is sacred ground and no guns, this is not going to happen within church. And so today in 2020, the measure was approved, and so it is now constitutionally your right to shoot anybody at church, and all you got to do is claim self-defense. That's all you have to do. I felt right. I walked into a black church in Franklin County, Alabama. I felt threatened by all these black folks, and so I pulled out my gun and shot them. Self-defense. And then you have a jury of your peers that look just like you, that think just like you, that have no cognitive dissonance in their life regarding racism, and get off scot-free. I never understood, and maybe this is a different conversation for another day, but I never understood how a jury of your peers and then you have nobody that looks like you. How do you, because I personally, if I'm ever convicted by a jury of my peers and there's no black women in the stands that look like Tayla, those aren't my peers, baby. What is your peer? Like, the definition of a peer is this person who looks and thinks and acts like me. Like, we work together. We do these things together. These are my peers. So I would call for a mistrial because that's not a jury of my peers. And I don't understand how constitutionally or like within the rights a person has, how so many cases have not been thrown out or retried because they did not have a jury of their peers. I digress, though. We have a Kevin. Oh, Kevin, I like your books. I am thoroughly enjoying your bookshelf. Kevin Peterson, can you hear us, Kevin Peterson?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, James Baldwin, living in the fire. How are you? Good rising. Always in pursuit.
Stanley Crouch.
Thoroughly enjoying your bookshelf.
Thank you.
I'd like to come over one day and just thumb through it.
It's a little library here. You're welcome.
I believe it. For those who do not know, Kevin Peterson is currently my hero because he is tackling the city of Boston and your mayor and asking the really dire question to why the hell is Faneuil Hall named after a slave master? And so before we begin, Kevin,
Sure,
I have
sure.
a really quick question that
Sure,
the
sure.
library could not answer for me. It's
Ah.
a yellow book. It's about 100 pages thick, and it's the history of Boston with all of the slave masters. And that
Yes.
book is called.
I believe it's the history of slavery in Massachusetts, published, I believe, by the Nation of Islam. So that
Really?
may not, that may be the reason why you can't find it in the local public library.
But it used to be, so the first time that I ever read it was when I was a student at RCC. And so I could, and as an alum of RCC, I called the other day while on air and I got a couple emails. I was just like, we have no idea what that book is called. But I think the last time I looked it up, it was like $150. And
Yes.
I think I want that book. So you said the history
Of
of slavery
in Massachusetts. Yeah.
in Massachusetts. So I was not able to find it because I kept on saying Boston, Boston, Boston.
I'm sure Massachusetts is in
the title. Okay, well then at a later date, Kevin, I would like to sit down with you and find this book because I'm not finding it anywhere. History of Slavery in Massachusetts. No, did not find it. But for those who don't know, as far as Dudley is concerned, let's go down the list, Kevin, of all of the slave masters that we claim these streets and we run these streets, but they're named after people who once had our ancestors in shackles.
Unfortunately, the first 16 presidents of the United States were slave owners. And that unfortunately has led to the naming of streets all across the nation after so-called famous white people who owned other human beings. So Nubian Square, which was named Dudley Square, was not named after a slave owner. Dudley was not a slave owner, but he was the governor of Massachusetts during the time that slavery was in place. So in some ways, he abetted slavery. There was raging debate around the country around whether or not slavery should persist in the colonies and the states. Dudley, as far as I know, did not say anything definitively as to whether he was pro-slavery or anti-slavery, but he was the governor at the time. So we have Washington Street, we have Lincoln Street. Well, we have a number of streets across the Commonwealth, across the city. The Wilson Elementary School in Boston, all segregationists, all white supremacists. Some of them were slave owners. That's unfortunate. We should we in Boston should look at renaming some of those streets. Maybe not all of them, because it would be duplicative to rename all of them. And we're looking at mainly offering a symbolic campaign against the names of some of these buildings and some of these monuments and some of these streets. Then the symbolism is very important, Tayla. I don't want anybody in your audience to think that it is symbolic in terms of being paper thin. The reason why some of these streets and names and monuments were named after presidents is because they came with ideological content. They came with the notion that these people were important and they represented the civilization. That's very, very important. It's symbolic, but it's very important. So as we look at changing Dudley to Nubian, as we look at changing Faneuil Hall, we now call it Slave Traders Hall for the time being. But as we look at changing that name, we are symbolically pushing up against the ideology of white supremacy in the city of Boston, as other cities and municipalities across the nation have done. So it's important.
Why is it important? So Faneuil Hall, aka slave trade.
Hmm.
Why is it
Hmm.
important for Faneuil Hall when we know that other
Yeah,
cities across the
yeah,
Commonwealth? Why specifically
yeah. We
Faneuil
call it
Hall?
Slave Traders Hall temporarily. Some people want it to be called Crispus Attucks Hall. Some people say Liberty Hall. Some folks have said Elizabeth Freeman Hall, who was the woman in Massachusetts who sued the Commonwealth over her slavery, and it led to the end of slavery in Massachusetts. We go after Faneuil Hall because it is that hall, that place goes to the very DNA in terms of the body politic of the city of Boston. it was it was erected before Boston, in fact, was a city. It was erected, in fact, before the United States was the United States, before we were a country in 1742. Uh, we, 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 we have targeted Faneuil Hall because Peter Faneuil was a slave owner, a slave trader. Upon his death, he left 5 slaves to his sister and his brother in order to perpetuate slavery. Uh, uh, the name of a person who bears such a character and such a legacy should not adorn a public building. The Faneuil Hall and the Quincy Marketplace, the the structure behind Faneuil Hall with the with all of the restaurants and the shops. They're public facilities. They're owned by the city, and so we think that perhaps if this was a private structure and a private enterprise, that we wouldn't have a case. But it is a public facility, and so we think that because Peter Faneuil had such a legacy, an ugly legacy, in the city of Boston, that we shouldn't name it after a slave trader. No one would tolerate Taylor um, Faneuil Hall being called Hitler Hall. The Jews, the Jewish community would be upset. No one would tolerate Faneuil Hall being called Mussolini Hall, who was a murderous dictator in Italy. Uh, Black people, in particular, should not tolerate the name of the hall being named after a person who was a white supremacist and who profited from the slave industry and who profited from the ugly legacy of bondage and enslavement uh, in the city of Boston. But Peter Faneuil's legacy as a multimillionaire, in some ways, he was the richest. Well, not in some ways. He is accorded to be at the time the richest man in the city of Boston, the richest person in the city of Boston. He got those riches from deriving his wealth from his uncle, Andrew Faneuil, who was a slave owner also, had slaves delivered to his home, Andrew Faneuil, his uncle. Um, but Peter Faneuil continued that legacy and became uh, by far the richest person in Boston. And most of that money was derived through the slave trade. So we shouldn't endorse that. Princeton University, Harvard University, Georgetown University have renamed buildings and monuments. Georgetown has created a special fund, all because they were connected to the legacy. Those institutions were connected to the legacy of slavery. We have a mayor in the city of Boston, Mayor Walsh, who believes that if we change the name of Faneuil Hall to some other name, that we're somehow erasing history. That's a lie. You can't erase history. You can suppress history. And the sad fact is that the history of Black people in the city of Boston has been suppressed. A lot of people don't realize that there were tens of thousands of people, Black people, Africans, sold at Faneuil Hall. They were sold at Quincy Market, the place where we buy pizza and popcorn and lobster and all those things. That was an auction block before it was Quincy Market. It was an auction block where slaves were sold. There's no marker. There's barely any indication that slaves were sold there, and it's shameful. 20 million people come through the Faneuil Hall marketplace, the Quincy marketplace, every year before the pandemic. 20 million. And I say that 20 million lies are told because Faneuil Hall and that place is not a cradle of liberty, as it's called, but it is a place where tens of thousands of black humans, African humans, were sold into lives of misery, or as I like to say, sold into social death.
So first I want to say, Anne Marie, thank you so much. She believes the book is called Notes on the History of Slavery in Massachusetts. I'm going to go ahead and look that up and see if that is it. So it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. So first and foremost, why hasn't, aside from you, Kevin, has there ever been a time in our history where anyone wanted to change the name?
No. Unfortunately, because as I mentioned, Tayla, the history has been suppressed. As I've talked to people from across the city, across the state, even, they're surprised to hear that there were slaves in the city of Boston. They lived all along Beacon Hill and into the South End before the city was a city. It was the town of Boston at the time that Peter Faneuil constructed Faneuil Hall, and he was using it, by the way, as a what we would call these days a office park. He wanted to put his offices there, and he wanted to lease out space to other merchants so they could sell things because it was so close to the harbor. Quincy Marketplace behind it wasn't there yet. That was the harbor. All that area is filled in now. So people have not really sort of pushed towards the change because the history has been suppressed. What's taught to our Boston public school students is that it is the cradle of liberty. Thousands, tens of thousands of school children go to Faneuil Hall each year before the pandemic, and they're not told about slavery. So there's not been a major push in the city to expose what I would say is a civic lie. I don't know if you can term it any more diplomatically than that, but it's a lie. We've been told a lie about the legacy of Peter Faneuil. We've been told lies about the legacy of the city of Boston. Now, this is why I think it's so important, Taylor. The legacy of slavery and oppression of Black people from the beginning, from the inception of the city, is represented metaphorically, symbolically, in the space that is now Faneuil Hall. He was a white supremacist. White supremacy, in some ways, still exists in 2020 Boston. So we use Faneuil Hall as a metaphor to speak to the current conditions in Boston for Black people. If you're if you're Black, Latino, or Cape Verdean male between the ages of 18 and 36 in the city of Boston, you're more likely to be a victim of murder, and you're less likely to have your case adjudicated in the court of law. If you're a Black person in the city of Boston, a Black woman, say between 25 and 50, you're more likely to suffer from health morbidities like diabetes and heart disease and breast cancer than the white counterpart. If you're a Black person, say a Black girl in middle school going to Mattapan, you're less likely to graduate from the Boston public schools than your white counterpart in West Roxbury. So all we see in Boston 2020 are these extreme instances where there is racial division that's reflected in structural racism. So we use the Faneuil Hall as an example, as a metaphor. We need the name change, but we also need to have a conversation about race that is about racial repair, racial reconciliation. So that's what this campaign is about. It's very important. It is.
And your mayor's against it because he's running around the city talking about, equity, diversity. He's running around here talking about we need to do better as a city to include Black and brown people. And I got people at the table letting us know, the right movements that we need to make for the betterment of Black and Latinos. And so the fact that has he agreed to like a marker? So we're not going to change Faneuil Hall, but we'll give you, the truth. What about like the reenactment situations? Like, have there been reenactments of like, aside from what you put on, Kevin, because I'm well aware of what you and your New Democracy Coalition has put on as far as like reenacting the slave block.
Yes.
But is there any like the city saying we're going to educate these millions of people that visit Boston on a regular basis for our historical value, and we're going to actually tell them the truth? So, pause. We have a family reunion every other year. So the Northeast, it was our turn back in 2018. And we were here and we did like the trails and like, Kevin, when I tell you as a Bostonian, when you know the history of Boston, and I found it, Kevin, it's called The Hidden History of Massachusetts. Yeah, by Tabinga Apita. I could have butchered that incorrectly, but I went on this tour with my family after reading the book. And I was just like, hold on, there's so many missing facts here. Even if you go and take the ferry around Charles River, you take the ferry in the bay, like there is no Black history anywhere in our tours. The Boston Tea Party, like nowhere. And so has the mayor said, aside, we're not willing to change the name, but we're willing to put some factual entertainment into the mix?
Not that I know of. There was an attempt a couple of years ago to install a slave auction block. I opposed it. The NAACP opposed it because we didn't feel that there was a fair public process where the Black community sort of weighed in. And so that artist, a very extraordinarily gifted artist, Steve Locke, pulled out of that.
Yeah, I read about that.
Yeah. So he pulled out. So there was some interest on the city's part to do something, but we thought that the mayor really didn't process that well with the Black community, with Black leadership. There were some things about that installation, the auction block, that didn't feel right for some Black people. Also, it was supposed to be heated up to the body temperature of a slave, those sort of things. So it wasn't processed well. So that sort of fell on its face. But the mayor introduced that, unfortunately, in the middle of our Rename Faneuil Hall campaign, as we felt, and we were feeling that was a way for him to sort of put something in front of us in order to divert the public's attention from around the renaming of Faneuil Hall. And more importantly, Tayla, having that conversation about race and reconciliation in the city of Boston. That's the most important thing. We want a public hearing. We want a public hearing in the city council.
Hold on, but pause. What about city councilors?
Yeah.
Who's bought into it city council wise? And they have like a whole Black and Latino caucus, and then they have the Black and Latino like city caucus version.
Unfortunately,
is there any buy-in?
Unfortunately, they're taking the lead of the mayor. The mayor doesn't want it, and so the city council has avoided filing legislation calling for a hearing. Now, here's the absurdity of it all.
Hold on, I want to be clear, Kevin, because we just had Andrea Campbell on here. I want to be clear. She opposes it.
She was president of the city council. A delegation of my organization went to the city council during the hearing, as she was president, and to protest that she and the other city councilors had not responded to letters to them, all 13 of them, asking for a public hearing. Not only did she not respond to the letter, Councilor Campbell, who's running for mayor, a Black woman, she was president at the time. Not only did she not respond, she suspended the hearing, called all the city councilors out of the chambers and turned the lights off on us and called security. We have that. That's on.
Kevin,
Now,
you gonna
Taylor,
make me call this woman right now.
Taylor, that's on YouTube. I don't have to. I'm
You
not
don't
making
have
it up.
to. That's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
Yo, Kevin, hold on 5 seconds. I
yes,
want you to
yes.
find the link, please. Can we take a 2-minute break? Can you send the link? Put it in the comments.
I think so.
Andrea, this better be a lie. This got to be a
I
farce.
wouldn't come on your show live.
What about Sonya? What's the girl name? She's running for mayor. I can see her face. Michelle Wu. What happened with Michelle Wu?
She pledged to support a hearing, but has avoided us and not responded and not done anything.
Julia Mejia.
Julia Mejia has agreed to hold a hearing on the lack of businesses in Faneuil Hall. I haven't gotten to this. There are 141 businesses and shops in the Faneuil Hall, Quincy Marketplace. None of them are black or brown owned. In a public building, in a public facility, 30% of the population is African American in Boston. Not one black-owned business in Faneuil Hall. The mayor should be ashamed of that. The city council should be ashamed of that. We've told them over and over again in letters on the public record that that this is problematic, and that, Taylor, it reflects the systemic racism in the city of Boston. How could something like this happen in a public facility? And the mayor refuses to meet with us, refuses to have a hearing, refuses to respond to the 7 letters that we've sent to him. We've had 10 press conferences. I caught him on radio one time, and he says that he accuses me of calling him a racist, and accuses me of calling him stupid. I never said that. The Boston Globe followed up on that story. It was on WGBH. The Boston Globe followed up where the mayor said that I called him a racist, and the Boston Globe said Kevin has never called Mayor Walsh a racist. So he flips the script on me around me talking about racism in Boston. He flips it on me and says that I've called him a racist. It's absurd. We think that we have a progressive mayor in the city, but when it really comes down to race, really sort of responding to the what's happening on the grounds in the neighborhoods and Bowdoin and Four Corners and Mattapan, where real black people are struggling to just find a living, to just persist in the city. The mayor tells things that are that are not factual around race, and he hires people who speak around how we're doing so well around race. That's not true, and he's cajoled. He's bullied. I believe he's bullied the city council not to hold a hearing. We can hold a hearing around trash pickup at any day next week. We can hold a hearing about the problem around stray cats in the city of Boston, but we can't have a hearing around race. There's something wrong here, Taylor. And I'm so glad that you've allowed me to speak on your show to let your audience know that the mayor has not been clear. I'm not calling him a racist, but he's not been clear, and I don't think he's been responsible. Let me put it that way. He's not been responsible in terms of addressing the issue of race. I'm looking for the YouTube clip now, where we were.
If you can hear my voice clap 1 time, you can hear my voice clap 2 times. I'm about to post some ish, and I need everybody to repost it and retweet it and reshare it, because I need to get a better understanding that these city council, it blows my mind that Andrea can, that's for me. That's not working out for me. That Andrea Campbell, who was on the show earlier this week, last week, who was on the show last week, is against and cut out the lights on the conversation surrounded around renaming Faneuil Hall. That is really, this is really hard for me to believe.
Okay.
You found it?
I did. I have it. Let's see. I'm gonna cut and paste it, right? Or I can share it.
You get whatever you want to do. I need to see with my own eyes that this was a real thing that happened. VOG, you had a conversation about this on your show?
Okay, I just sent it to your email.
Thank you. I am, yo, Kevin.
It's crazy.
So how do you hold pause? Because I gotta stop here. How do you say you are for black? And I'm really disappointed because you said Michelle Wu is for it, but Andrea Campbell cut out the lights. And that blows my mind.
You'll see the video. They all walked out on this and turned the lights off. The entire city council, led by the president of the city council, Andrea Campbell, at the time. She's not the president now. And I should let you know that the current president of the city council, Kim Janey, in Roxbury, opposes having a hearing.
Listen, we're not going to have a conversation about Kim Janey because if we were to really have that conversation, somebody might be at my house today. So
why? What's wrong with Kim Janey? Okay,
there's multi-million-dollar construction going on, and Cruise Company ain't been winning all the bids. So, can we have a real conversation? Because I've reached out. I definitely have reached out because I'll call you in before I call you out. And, let's have a real conversation about we ain't seen you. We don't see the votes representative of us. We don't, there's a lot of things that aren't seen, but there's paychecks that are being cashed. Mm-hmm. And these are our tax-paying dollars. And if you're supposed to be representing us, then your vote is for us and not for your own benefits or your family's benefits or your cousins and your brothers and your daddy and your uncle and everybody else's benefit. I'm super annoyed. Steve, what's going on? How are you? Bill, how are you? I really I feel obligated to call Andrea Campbell because I am so in awe right now and disbelief that this is hold on, we're gonna do the real thing because I know it ain't just me. And it was 12 minutes, the one that you sent me. Here it is. We're going to go ahead and...
The New Democracy Group went to the Boston City Council chambers and demanded a hearing on renaming of Faneuil Hall.
Faneuil Hall, change the name.
Change the name.
Change the name.
Peter Faneuil
So
We're asking for the truth to be said. We know that if the truth is said.
I think I muted my mic, and so there was a lot of people that couldn't even hear it. So Kevin. Kevin. Okay. So I am going to take you off mute. And so I'm going to, I muted myself so there wasn't an echo. And in the midst of me muting myself, I muted everything. And so,
we can hear it.
Yeah. So basically, long story short, let me be clear. So there was not a hearing. You sent out 3 separate letters, and on those 3 separate letters, nobody responded.
Seven separate letters.
7 separate letters. No one responded. And so you took matters into your own hands went with signs and interrupted. What was it, a trash hearing? What was the hearing on that you interrupted?
It was the Wednesday regular city council hearing.
Okay, and so that video was posted on March 7th, 2019. And since then, there has not been a hearing on the Faneuil Hall conversation.
That's correct.
Okay. Who is for the name change of Faneuil Hall?
Among the city councilors?
Correct.
There are city councilors who say that they're in favor of it, but they've taken no action. So I can't consider them in favor of it if they've never communicated with me. So we sent out a city council election survey last year as they were up for re-election, and we asked them if they were in favor. We asked them about how they felt around race relation. City council president did not respond, Andrea Campbell. She ignored it. Probably says that she never received it. But those who answered and responded were Julie Mejia, Michelle Wu, and Councilor Arroyo. Those 3 said that they favored a hearing, not necessarily a name change, but they favored a hearing. We followed up on all 3 of them around the hearing, around the name change, and none of them have agreed to file the legislation that just simply calls for a hearing around whether or not it's a feasible thing to do. We're not asking them to be in support of it. I can imagine why someone would want to keep the name there for historical reasons.
No, I don't. Kevin,
I can imagine.
What?
I don't agree. But I can imagine someone coming up with some kind of lame, jacked up reason why they don't want to change it. But just give us the hearing at least. Give Black people a voice in the city at least. And it is a function of racism, of white supremacy in the city, that Black people will not stand up for other Black people whom they represent in the city council. It's amazing that a Black city councilor, 2 Black female city councilors, whom Mayor Walsh parades around the city as representing how progressive and racially progressive the city is, they won't even hold a hearing around whether or not we should change the name of a building that's named after a slave trader, which is a publicly owned building. Our Black city council, shame on them. Shame on Mayor Walsh. It's poor leadership. The state of Mississippi, Tayla, changed the symbol of its flag this summer, the Confederate flag. Mississippi and Massachusetts, the city of Boston has a problem of holding a hearing on changing the name of Faneuil Hall. Mississippi is more progressive around eradicating racist symbols and racist monuments than the city of Boston and its so-called leadership. The majority of the Boston City Council are people of color, have never held an issue around race as far as I know. Now, I go back a little bit. I worked for 3 different city councilors. I was the chief of staff for one city council. I know how the city council works. And I know that when the city council holds a hearing, what transpires during that hearing is public record for the history books, what's said. That's why we want a public hearing, because we know that once we hold a public hearing and we let people know that Faneuil Hall represents a white supremacist view, that's reflected in all of our city institutions, that's reflected in our culture in the city of Boston in 2020, that's going to go on the record. And somebody needs to do something about it, particularly our so-called Black Progressive City Council. That's one of the reasons I believe they don't want to hold a hearing, but we're going to hold them accountable. So at the end of that video,
we have Lydia Edwards, Anissa Sebi George, Kim Janey. Julia was the only one for it, but she hasn't acted.
That's right. And they have Felix Arroyo, who's Latino.
And he was for it, but hasn't acted.
Correct.
So I'm putting myself on a chopping block, and we're about to tweet this. Y'all about to retweet, right? And tell your friends to retweet, and tell your friends to retweet, because I need answers. I need answers. So what about?
Can you tweet the YouTube video?
Yes.
Yes,
I will. Actually,
put that out there, because at the end of the video, you see the city councilors walking out on us after Lydia Edwards gets into a shouting match with me and tells me to go get naked in front of the State House around the Faneuil Hall.
That's not a real thing, Kevin.
No,
she did not tell you to get.
She did. It's on the video. It's on the YouTube thing. It was crazy. That could be on your Freaky Friday segment, right? I don't know Lydia Edwards. I'd never met her before, but she approaches me because she's seen me in the media reenacting the slave auction block. And so I had my pants rolled up and I had my shirt rolled up. She interpreted that as me being naked. So she says in the middle of the city council hearing to me, she yells out and says, "Kevin, you need to go get naked in front of the State House again and not be here." That's weird. That's something. That's on the YouTube video. I'm not making it up. You can't hear it though. Still can't hear it. Council's not in session right
These city councils have gotten letters after letters after letters, and they have not answered it.
And they turned the lights off.
All they needed to do.
Turn the light.
This is democracy in action, people. I cannot believe this.
Let's go,
I'm
guys,
glad
please.
this is on camera. Really. And this is what we're teaching our children to aspire to.
Guys, you just had something that will happen for students canceled
They
because
need
you
to
guys.
learn what their civic
All right, let's
duties
go.
are.
Let's go.
We're doing this for our children. Don't go anywhere. We're doing this for our children.
Yeah, but you guys can't even let them kids have their say.
We are doing this for our children.
Absolutely.
Don't
This is
leave.
civic in action.
Don't leave.
This is civic in action.
Don't leave.
This is civic in action.
You guys got to go.
They're all.
Time to go.
This
You
is
don't tell us what to do. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? What's your name?
But right now, they.
Okay.
That's sad. Turn the lights off and walked out.
Bill, I went ahead and posted it because I don't know, because I did everything I was supposed to do so y'all could hear it. Y'all hear the damn YouTube videos when I play, so I'm not sure why it is that you guys couldn't hear it, but I am livid.
Should be. Yeah.
In the video, it says that you guys interrupted the babies, though. What y'all interrupted
No.
the babies for? What was
No,
going on
no.
with the babies?
No, there was a grade school class there who was being recognized. It's standard to the Boston City Council. At at the point that we decided to go into the council, it had been over a year since our initial letter. We made several visits to the city council and knocked on doors. We had several press conferences about it, addressing the city council, all ignored. So we felt compelled to go to what was a public meeting. So it wasn't a private meeting where the babies were being interrupted. It was a public meeting. We had every right to be there. We have every right to voice our opinion on the issue of race in the city of Boston. So there were city councilors who said, "Oh well," and I think it was a security person who said, "Well, you just embarrassed the young people." And our response, it wasn't me, there was some other people who said that we're doing this for the children. Because those children come to Faneuil Hall and they're told lies, Tayla. And they live in a city that is hyper segregated. The average net worth of a white family is $247,000 compared to $8. The average net worth of a black family is $8. We're speaking on behalf of those children in terms of how they're treated racially in the city. And if we can't go to the Boston City Council to raise the issue of white supremacy and racism, that's reflected just in that income inequality around race, then we're damned as a city. Black people are damned in this city. So someone in our group mentioned that we're doing it for the children. So if it's important, it may be important for our children, our black children, to understand the issue of racial division in the city, rather than receive an award from the Boston City Council, which acts in so many ways like race doesn't exist, like we're living in some kind of nirvana where everything is perfect. That's a lie. Black people catch hell in the city of Boston, and it's papered over all the time. So I don't feel any embarrassment around interrupting that meeting. I feel a sense of shame for those city councilors, all of them, who walked out on us, who didn't want to hear.
Well, go ahead and go repost on Facebook and retweet on Twitter, because I got questions and I want answers.
Yeah.
I want answers, because this is, even, let's say, for instance, we are not changing the name. I at least want there to be acknowledgement about the businesses. And I've been having this conversation as far as business is concerned, because when you look at the South End waterfront,
yes.
The South End waterfront has one business that is a Black or Latino business. And it's like 4 or 5 different barbers that came together to put their money together to have a barbershop. And there's like 4 different shops inside of a shop. And mind you, it's what, like 400 square feet?
Yeah. I know where that barbershop is. The waterfront is the newest neighborhood in the city of Boston.
You know what? Andrea was just on air talking about they had an elders meeting, and at the elders meeting, one of the elders was like, I want to go to the new neighborhood. And she was just like, why? Like, why? It's not a new neighborhood. It's everybody's neighborhood. They were talking about it like it was something foreign, like it was somewhere far, when it's right in their backyard.
Right. And it's hyper segregated. Less than 7% of the people who live in those neighborhoods are African American, Latino, Cape Verde. Doesn't reflect the diversity of the city. A new neighborhood where we, would have the foresight. We should have the foresight to say, let's make this new neighborhood a so-called integrated neighborhood. Hold
on, you said 7%. Where you get that number? Because we were looking at numbers last week, and does that 7% include the projects? And where's the numbers that don't include the projects?
No, I'm not talking about the South End. I'm talking about the waterfront in particular. I'm talking about. So I'm not talking about the
South End waterfront that they just. It's not really Seaport, so they're not calling it Seaport.
I'm talking. Well, I think that's a way to hide the numbers to include the South End. If you talk, the Seaport is an entirely new neighborhood. Less than 7%. That number I got last year from the Boston Business Journal. So if you pull in if you make the Seaport part of South End, you get a little more diversity. But that's a fake number put out there by the city of Boston to hide the fact that there's so little diversity in this new neighborhood, and they're not willing or they don't have the capacity to do anything about it. The Seaport is an embarrassment. The Seaport, in terms of its racial diversity, is just like South Boston was 50 years ago. You're not allowed there. And you can't live there. And you can't eat there.
Well, you can, technically. You might not feel comfortable doing it.
I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you get my point.
I get it. Kevin, I'm annoyed. I thank you. For those who don't know, what exactly is yes, VOG, you can definitely ask a question. What is the actual New Democracy Coalition? Prior to changing the name of Faneuil Hall, what is the underlying premise of what the New Democracy Coalition does?
Civic engagement for communities of color. About 6 or 7 years ago, we redrew the district maps in the city, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where we created new state rep, new Senate seats. We created the congressional district that Ayanna Pressley was elected to. So we're an organization that is about pro-democracy, particularly for people of color. We do voter registration. We do voter turnout. We do information forums around history and Black culture in the city of Boston. We do a whole lot more than we should be doing because we got organizations that could be functioning more effectively in the Black community. But we go ahead and do it, and we try to partnership with all that we know. On this coming Saturday, on November 7th at 1 o'clock, we're going to be at Faneuil Hall. We call it Slave Traders Hall. We want to invite all your listeners, all your viewers, Tayla, to come to Faneuil Hall, Slave Traders Hall at 1 p.m., where we're going to have a demonstration that continues a public push. If the elected officials are not listening, they've all been invited. The Black clergy has been invited. Black elected officials are being invited. We don't expect them. We don't expect them. And that's sad because they're supposed to be on the vanguard of leadership. But they've been
especially when you're running for mayor, especially when you out here, quote unquote, in the community doing good things and you want praises on the back. Why can't we just have a hearing about the name change? Why wouldn't, I want the other side of this, and yes. I don't have Andrea's direct number, but I want to ask.
I can give it to you.
Why?
I can give it to you. I have a direct number.
Oh, you got Marty too? I've been trying to call Marty for about a year and a half now. What's Marty's
number?
I have.
You want me to give it to you on the air?
On air, no, because I don't want the phone to blow up. I want to call by myself. Okay?
I'll give it to you. These people were my friends, and in some ways I consider them friends. I don't. They have done good things for the city. On this issue, they're absolutely wrong, and this is a major issue. On this issue, Mayor Walsh is absolutely wrong. He's been a friend in the past.
Devil's advocate, Kevin. Who cares? Who cares, Kevin? Who cares?
That's right.
It's named after a slave owner. Most of these schools named after people who own slaves. The whole country, the dollar bills out here, slave owners. Kevin, who cares? Why do you care so much about changing the name to Faneuil Hall?
I care because it's important that Black people are represented fairly within our democracy. 1, 2, the real point, Tayla, is that we need to have the conversation. And this is a way that we have the conversation on the record. So are you in favor or you're not in favor? Why? What's the feasibility? We can have the conversation then around Faneuil Hall. We are simultaneously able to have the conversation around race and racial reconciliation in the city of Boston. I mentioned those statistics in terms of Black life in the city of Boston being dramatically, horribly different from white life in the city. How do we get to have that conversation? Well, to talk about Faneuil Hall and the name change is perhaps a way that we can open the door in terms of having that conversation. So I care, and I think you care, Tayla, about race and racism in the city of Boston. And we use Faneuil Hall as a proxy, as a way to begin to have a conversation. One of the things and I'll say this on your show, I supported Marty Walsh in his first election, on the premise, and this was a one-to-one conversation I had with him, that he hold racial dialogues sessions in the city of Boston. He held two. None of them were in the city, were in the Black community, and then he cut them off. And then he goes and parades around the city saying that the city of Boston doesn't have a race problem, until George Floyd, where he says, okay, now we do have a race problem. And then he said he would meet with us about Faneuil Hall.
But that's a lie, though. Tia Martin is like, that's a lie, because we had the entire 100 resilient city. Like, remember when Birmingham was our sister city and we did 100 resilient city?
Yeah.
And Tia spoke to 25,000 Bostonians and put together a whole package on how to make Boston resilient and equitable, equitable. What do you mean Boston doesn't have a race issue? Like, we had an entire year and a half with the Rockefeller Foundation proving that Boston was racist. So I'm not understanding the hypocrisy at all.
He tweeted last year that Boston is one of the most progressive racist cities around race in the nation, and nobody believes it. I don't know if he believes it, right? So it's an embarrassment, and it's one of the most important issues for the city entirely. The people of color who are running for mayor are afraid to run on the issue of race because they don't want to catch hell, because it is a racist city. They don't want to open up the proverbial can of worms. Well, I'm opening them, and I'm saying Faneuil Hall is an example of how we are a racist city. The number one tourist attraction in the city of Boston, the number two tourist attraction in the United States is Faneuil Hall. In the United States, behind Disney World, Faneuil Hall, right? And the guy was a stone racist, right? Owned people, supported a slave trade that supported the rape of Black women, the whole 9 yards. We know.
What do you need from us, Kevin?
We need your audience, to show up on Saturday. And we have a petition. You go to newdemocracycoalition.org, change.org petition that we want your audience to, I'll send that link to you also. I hope you can send it out. Sign the petition, show up at our rally, challenge the mayor, give him a call. Challenge those people who are running for mayor, Andrea Campbell and Michelle Wu, about where they stand on race, and do they support an immediate hearing around the name change of Faneuil Hall. It should be Christmas Addicts Hall, or named after somebody who has Cornel West, you know him, last week just sent us a letter. Cornel West, Harvard University, Black professor, race matters, right? Sent us a letter and says the name should be changed. He stands in solidarity with us. So there are Ben Crump, a friend of ours. We had him in town in January before the pandemic. He supports us. He goes around the country. He sees what other cities are doing in terms of changing the names of streets and monuments and schools. Ben Crump, our premier Black civil rights lawyer, is in support of us. We can't get the Black city council president to support us. Shameful. So we ask the audience to support us.
Okay, so I have already tweeted and already posted on Facebook. TaylaAndre, everything Tayla Andre. If you are on Twitter, please go to Twitter and retweet. If you're not on Twitter, start one, because I promise you, you'll get Twitter is where you get everybody's attention. If you want an answer, you go to Twitter. You want Fridays, Dunkin' Donuts, whoever you want. Somebody wronged you, take it to Twitter, and I guarantee you're going to get results almost immediately. Airlines, hotels, name it. Like, Twitter, they don't want no bad publicity on Twitter. So if you post something on Twitter, they doing everything they can to make sure you take that down. Second, it is on Facebook, TaylaAndre. I know I have 2 pages. It is on the page with me and the hair blowing in the wind with the blue shirt, and not the other one that looks representative of my real estate flyer, just to be clear. sign the petition, which has been posted. Show up at Saturday at 1 p.m. But I got plans at 1 though. Like I got to do something real
1 to
quick.
3.
1 to 3. You ever show up at the mayor's house?
No, we haven't done that. We're thinking about it. We tried to keep it into the keep the discussion in the public and not invade his private space. I understand other activists going to the folks' houses, but we want to keep it in City Hall for the time being. We may go to the mayor's house at one point, at some point. It's important for your listeners, people in the Black community, people who are living in poverty, people whose backs are against the wall in terms of economics and healthcare and all that sort of stuff. It's important for them to know that all of this is linked to race. All of it.
Okay, Kevin, the name has changed. It's now Crispus
Attucks, right?
Crispus Attucks. Now the name's changed. Now what?
Then after the hearing, we have a baseline of discussion around what needs to change around race more generally. So if I were at that hearing today, let's say the hearing was held today, I'd say, yes, the name should be changed, but this place represents racism in the real world that the city of Boston needs to address. How do we eradicate the disparity in terms of the net worth of $8 for Black people versus $247,000? You know where that is? You know where it is. You're a real estate person. It's in home ownership.
I was just about to say, Kevin, we're doing that. We're building 159,000 units for people to rent out of.
To rent, not own. There's a difference. You don't get the equity. You don't get the personal net worth in terms of renting. You get it in terms of home ownership. So I don't know what the specific number in terms of home ownership, where the net worth is for Black people, but it's low. It doesn't represent the 30% of the population of the city of Boston. Black people are not owning 30% of the land wealth, home worth, net worth in the city of Boston. That needs to change. That can be done through public policy. So if I were to be at the hearing today, I'd say, sure, we should rename Faneuil Hall, because it mocks Black people, because he was a slave owner. But the more important thing I would say to the president of the city council is we need to do something around the gap between net worth of Black families and white families. That's appalling. Faneuil Hall represents that. It is a symbolic representation of the racism that we feel in the real world. So that's what I would say. Let's change the name. Yeah, that would be a good thing, major thing, because our children should be going to a place that's named after a racist, right? How can we, in this generation, speak to our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, who might one day say, what is it? Why is it important to call that place Peter Faneuil? And we did nothing about it in our generation. We leave that legacy, a racist legacy, to our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren? No, we got to step up, Black people. Our elected officials need to step up, particularly the Black ones, who should know better.
So what about, all right, fine. They don't want to have a hearing about Faneuil Hall and changing the name Faneuil Hall. But what about the fact that that is public property that doesn't
That's crazy.
Have any like diversity at all?
That's the crazy thing. And when we started digging into what Faneuil Hall represented in real life, and found out that there were 141 businesses and shops, and none are owned by black people in a public building, that's South African apartheid, economic apartheid. There's no difference from the South Africa under P.T. Botha, right? Botha, whatever his name was, right? And Johannesburg and 1968 and Boston and 2020 in terms of Faneuil Hall. That is just racist, reflected in our economic system. You know that our neighborhoods across the city of Boston are segregated.
But has there been any conversation? So going back to city councilors, going back to like electives of color in greater Boston that represent Boston. So I'm not even talking about just city. I'm talking about on the state and on the federal level. Have we had any representation to say, yes, you know, I concur, it should, even though I don't have no hand in this pot. Like, even though it's not me, I can't do anything, but I stand with you. Like, I'm specifically asking whether or not Ayanna was like, yeah, it need to be changed.
No. Ayanna Presley has not weighed in the issue at all.
Has it been laid before her?
Yes, she received one of the letters before she was elected into office. We started this campaign in late 2017. And so she would have received one of the letters. She never responded. She was elected to the Congress in 2018.
So 2017, she was still a
She was
city
still
councilor
city council. So
at
she
large.
received, yes. She received one of those letters, those initial letters, along with the mayor asking for a hearing. She didn't respond. Now, maybe she's busy. Maybe she has another sort of racial reconciliation, racial repair campaign that she hasn't told the public about, hasn't told me. So I can't answer for her. I just know that she didn't respond to that letter. Both black presidents of the city council have not responded. The mayor has not responded. I'm not trying to cast blame or vilify any of them as people. I just know that on this issue, in terms of just responding to constituents, black people who vote, that they've come up short. I'm being diplomatic here.
And I'm being an asshole because I'm already getting text messages. People is mad. Keep tweeting, keep retweeting, keep resharing. If you're on Facebook, share it. If you're on Instagram, screenshot it and share it. I want everybody to know that these elected officials ain't doing a damn thing when it comes to Faneuil Hall. And not just Faneuil Hall, but for me, it's the businesses for me. Like, I really don't. For me, it's the businesses. I don't give nothing about Faneuil or his hall. Quincy Market. Like, I've known ever since I read the book back in college that Boston has a serious underlying racist issue that stems back from our history. Like, this isn't new. This isn't, somebody wrote about it in about an article, and so this article made it true. No, like, if you read the books about Boston and our history, you know for a fact that this is long standing in who we are as a Commonwealth.
But you should be concerned about the name change, because to not change the name is to accept a white supremacist view of history, which says that black people are not important. That's what that represents. It says that you're not important. It's almost like calling you the N-word. You're not important, and we shouldn't tolerate that. Now, the businesses, you're right on the money there, because that goes to accumulating wealth within the black community. There should be 30% of those businesses should, at least 30% should be people of color or black. And those black people probably should live in the city of Boston. That will address some of the issue around the net worth disparity between blacks and whites, right? So yeah, change the name, because you don't let anybody call you a name and walk away, right? Don't call them, them keeping the name is the equivalent of them saying to me every day, N-word. We don't care what you say. We want to keep it, and you're an N, and we don't care about what you say.
Kevin, can you refresh my memory? Is there in the middle, like off of the pier, is there a statue of a man and a woman, representative of slaves, of those that?
No, there is a what do you call it? A kind of like a kiosk that stands over at the waterfront that represents the transatlantic slave trade.
But I thought it was, so it's not in the water. It's not like a huge statue. It's a kiosk.
It's like a kiosk. It's like two little stalls that have an inscription that talks about the transatlantic. And that's, quite frankly, that's in the North End. Black people don't know where that is. It just got installed about 3 months ago, to no fanfare at all. There are no memorials or statues in the city of Boston that really reflect the slave trade or the presence of racism or slavery in the city of Boston. We have the Holocaust Memorial across from Faneuil Hall that represents the annihilation of 6 million Jews that happened in Europe. We have a statue that in downtown Boston that represents the Irish famine tragedy that happened in Europe. the slavery that was represented in Boston and Massachusetts, Massachusetts being the first state of the colony to institutionalize slavery on the books legally. There's nothing that substantially equates both the Irish Family Memorial and the Jewish Holocaust Memorial for Black people. That's
So
amazing.
let me
That's
be
amazing.
clear.
Yes,
Based on my
yes,
text messages, I want to be clear.
yes, yes.
Who is for city council? Who is for? Who is against? Who need to be put on a chopping block? I want to be clear.
All of them, because none of them have come out publicly to declare that they support the name change. They support a few of them. I mentioned Arroyo, Wu, and Arroyo, Wu, and Mejia are supportive of a hearing, and maybe Anissa George, Asabi George, supportive of a hearing. But none of them have come out and says, "Yeah, let's change the name," and none of them have filed for a hearing, despite our repeated calls since last year, since they answered our survey when they were up for re-election. The only reason I think they responded to the survey, they were up for re-election. None of them has done a dime about calling for a hearing.
So what about, does any of that fall into like, oh, that's not my district, or I'm not the council chair, or I'm not like that department chair? Like, is any of that representative, like, I'm just trying to be clear, because I'm not in city council. I don't know a damn thing about city council and or how it works.
I do. I worked for three city councils, chief of staff at one point. All city councilors represent the entire city, even though some of them may represent districts. When they take a vote on trash pickup for the city of Boston, if you're a city councilor in representing Roxbury, you're voting for an action, a policy action for the entire city. So all the city councilors have a responsibility for public policy for the city of Boston. So any one of them could file for a hearing, notwithstanding district lines. But they tried to tell me, right, well, it's not in my district, and I defer to the person whose district it's in. The district that Faneuil Hall and Faneuil Hall Marketplace sits in is under Mayor Ed, City Councilor Ed Flynn.
Yo, I used to call Ed Flynn out all the time because I ain't never seen Ed Flynn at a damn council hearing. Like, he don't never be nowhere. I swear, that's the city councilor that don't, he just get paid for a title, because I've never seen him show up, not anywhere.
It's in his district. He hasn't responded to any of the letters.
Do you show up? So I'm a pop-up video type girl. So do you just pop up at the office?
Under COVID-19, no. So we haven't been there since February or January. City Hall is mostly closed. Most of their business is done on Zoom. But before that, we would just pop up and say, listen, this is important for the city. Mr. City Council, I know you represent a so-called white district, but if you had the courage to step out on this, this would make you look progressive in front of the whole world. We've been covered across the globe, Tayla. New York Times articles, all that sort of stuff. They're watching. The world is watching Boston in terms of how they deal with the Faneuil Hall question. There have been 3 New York Times articles. There have been Associated Press, you're in the media, Associated Press articles, numerous of them, that go across the globe. And they're wondering and they're scratching their head, just as you've been doing this morning. And as your audience has been saying, what's up with our black city councilors? What's up with this mayor who's a Democrat, who says that he's progressive around race, who's been elected by a large majority of the black community? What's up with him ignoring this issue around racial equity in the city of Boston? That's what's so problematic. That's what's so strange.
What's problematic and what's strange to me is we have a minority. That's so weird to even say, as far as the city council is concerned. And for them not to like spearhead this like arrow chuck, for this not to be an issue, I don't know. What about Zakem? Because Zakem seemed pretty liberal in all of his getting heat. I feel like he be getting understanding.
He didn't respond when he was in office. He's no longer in office.
Oh yeah, they did vote his ass out.
Yeah. Well, no, he left the council. He ran for Secretary of State and wasn't successful. He left the council. But at the point when he was a city council, he didn't respond to our letter. So the whole so-called liberal component of the city council has basically turned their head and said that they don't want to answer this question. It's a tough question. It's a tough question.
It is not a tough question. Yo, when you have integrity, it's not a tough question.
Yeah, but and I'm not trying to speak for them, but it's for them to answer that question means that they're going to have to do a whole lot of work around the issue of race, and they're going to have to earn their paycheck, and they don't want to do it. Right. So it's a tough question for them. So they rather avoid it, rather than put their integrity on the line and say that racism is wrong. Right.
So, but what about the ones that have said, Isabel, let me be clear. I don't think that if you have Ayanna Presley's phone number in Washington, I don't think it's necessary to call her because this is something that needs to be done on a city level. And
kind of.
So you think we do need to call Ayanna?
Yeah, because want to tell you why? Because Faneuil Hall and the marketplace receives federal funding. It is on the National Historic Register. So it is in some ways a national monument, Tayla. So that's why somebody like Cornel West, who's of international fame, and Ben Crump, who doesn't live in the city, that's why they're weighing in on it, because they see this place as a national monument. 20 million people, second most visited tourist spot in the nation. 20 million lives are told about Black representation, and none are told. I slipped into some of the tours that they conducted around Faneuil Hall, right? Just popped in to see what they were saying. 5 times, I think. None of those times did any of those tour guides say Peter Faneuil was a racist, a white supremacist, a slave owner, a racist. None of them. They say at best they would say that he was associated, I think was the rate, with the slave trade. The dude had 5 slaves in his house. Died at 43. 5 slaves in his house, right? I don't know where he lived, in Boston. None of that's said in those tours. It's an embarrassment. I'm from Philly. I'm not an original Bostonian, but I'm invested here. I voted all my life here. I've worked here, all that sort of stuff. I don't want this stuff going on in my city. I claim the city. It shouldn't go on. You're a native, right, Tayla? It shouldn't be going on in your city.
So Jeff is over here talking about the
What's that?
you guys are putting Faneuil Hall on trial. What does that look like?
Oh, putting Peter Faneuil on trial. Faneuil on trial on Saturday.
Yeah,
he's going on Saturday. It's the prosecution of Peter Faneuil. So Peter Faneuil will be there in body and in spirit. We got somebody playing Peter Faneuil, and there's going to be a prosecutor, a lawyer, a white lawyer, who is going to read out the bill of indictment on Peter Faneuil, and it's a long bill of indictment. You were involved in the owning, you were involved in the industry, you were involved in trading slaves for rum and money and sugar and all that sort of stuff. How do you plead? He's going to have a jury of white peers, white jury, and I'll tell you what's going to happen. Spoiler alert. He's going to be found guilty.
Okay, so the truth is one of our followers, one of our listeners, and he is so faithful to the process. He is pro black, and he said Peter's son is a European slave name. Like, when are you gonna change your name? You want Faneuil Hall to be changed? How about you change your name because you ain't Peter's son, B?
That's a good question.
I need to be Kevin X.
There you go. I need to think about that carefully. That's a good question.
Listen, that's an A. Peter X. I changed my name. That's why my name's Tayla Andre. There's only a selected few that know that. I got rid of my last name quick. My last name is my middle name.
Okay.
But come on, Peter. You could be
Kevin,
Peter
Kevin.
X. I'm down for Peter X.
You may call me Peter X.
I may call you Peter X. Kevin, I truly do appreciate you. I appreciate this conversation. As far as like, let's take it out of the Peter Faneuil conversation.
Sure.
Far as new democracy, I'm all for a damn new democracy, especially what's going on with the election right now. What does the New Democracy Coalition look like when it comes to education and the fact that we don't have an elected school board? What does it look like when it comes to like police reform? What does New Democracy Coalition look like for the Commonwealth when we have a huge percentage of black people and none of our needs are being met?
That's right. Well, we cannot have a true democracy if we don't deal with the race problem. And it goes back to the founding of the nation. Black people were 3/5 of a human being at the inception of the nation. We've never been able to appropriately deal with the race problem, so we've never appropriately dealt with the democracy problem. So in small ways, my organization, which is a small organization, but have powerful ideas and powerful volunteers, right? We're doing work around civic education. So we engage young people in high school in our democracy lab. We teach them about citizenship. We teach them about voting. 2 weeks ago, Tayla, we came out for the elected school committee. We believe the parents whose children represent the greater majority of those who attend the Boston public schools need to have direct say in terms of who makes policy. So elected school committee, we need that. When we lost the elected school committee 25 years ago, we lost 4 black elected officials. We need that representation in the city. I'm not sure if the school committee has been setting good policy, quite frankly, over the last 25 years as an appointed school committee, last 20 years.
In the last 5 years. Let's talk about in the last 5.
In the last 5, we got that horrible
we
situation at Boston Latin, where the young ladies were ridiculed around the issue of race. Even though we have a black headmaster over there now, we got rid of it. I was in the middle of that fight. We got rid of that white school headmaster. Got rid of her because she was derelict in her duty in terms of responding to race. Got rid of her. Even with the black headmaster, Tayla, less than 5% of the student body is African American at Boston.
What they say, kinfolk ain't all.
That's
not
right,
all
that's right,
skinfolk is kinfolk, baby.
I don't
but
know.
You know what?
I don't know. That's right.
It's a new conversation about black at BLA and the entire
that's right.
test to test schools. And I say this all of the time, being a real estate agent, like I see it every single freaking day, Kevin. These people own properties in the city of Boston and then rent them out and pay the utilities. They pay the water bill, they pay the electric, and they pay the gas. And so when it's time to prove you live in the city of Boston and all you need to do is show that tax bill, all you need to do is show that water bill, but you also have a water bill in Watertown. You also have a water bill in Woburn. So, you know, I would like a coalition that door knocks on all of these children's parents' doors. And if your parents don't come to the door, baby, we gonna have to remove you from school, just like all these black babies are being removed across the nation.
I agree. So we call for an elected school committee. We call for term limits in terms of the Boston City Council. They should not be elected for life if they run over and over and over again. We call for term limits on the mayor's office in the city of Boston. These are some of the policy changes that we can make that makes democracy better for Black people in the city, but also in the state. The New Democracy Coalition was in the lead in terms of same-day automatic voter registration, which will come into place in the next presidential election, where if you turn 18, when you turn 18, you'll be automatically registered to vote. That increases the voting rolls, the voting presence for communities of color across the state. That's some of the work that we do on on the issue of democracy that has implications in terms of race. But you can't answer one question, democracy, without responding to the other question, race.
Let's say, for instance, devil's advocate. Kevin, you are spending a lot of time trying to integrate into a burning house, okay? So why don't you just do your own thing and, understand that this democracy does not include you, and create your own democracy and create.
It would be irresponsible. The legacy of Black people in the city and the country is so profound. In some ways, we made the country, right? In terms of policy, we've defined what liberty is supposed to look like, and freedom and democracy is supposed to look like. And we're far away from chattel slavery. We're not exactly where we should be. There's a long way to go. I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a person who doesn't believe in community engagement. I believe in community. I believe in community and development. One of the ways we do that is through getting involved in the civic process. We all have to do that. I understand the Malcolm X quote, "We're in a burning house, so get out." James Baldwin said the same thing towards the end of his life. That's the sort of pessimism that we shouldn't embrace, because we need to be putting the fire out, or building a new house, or building a new democracy, and by democracy is not a term that's exclusive, that's owned by white people. There were democracies in ancient societies in Africa, where civilization began, where this idea of there being community and everybody being respected, everybody being held accountable in terms of their responsibility, in terms of civics. So I'm not leaving. I want to leave a legacy of Boston being a better city for Black people than what it is now. I think we should all be involved in that. If we all turn our heads away, or if we all walk away, that's just irresponsible, and we open ourselves up to further abuse if we're not involved. We don't hold the president of the city council, a Black woman, accountable around issues of race. Then white people are not bound to respect us. So they're liable to do the most egregious things in the police department, in the fire department. 25% of the city's school teachers are supposed to be Black. The mayor doesn't, and that's a court order.
What number are we at, Kevin?
We're at 18%, and the mayor doesn't care. That's a court decree. That is in violation of the federal court, right?
I don't know why you acting like we don't have decrees and ordinances for other things. We're not, Kevin, we're not supposed to be building shit in the city unless it meets 50, 20, 15. 50% Bostonian. 50% Bostonian, 15%, or he upped the numbers, 30% minority, 15% women. So how is the city of Boston being built if that's an ordinance that is already on the books and is a decree?
Because they're breaking law.
We have
accountability.
How, Kevin?
Well, you got to challenge. You're pissed off about our Black city councilors. They need to know that Tayla Andre and her squad, her posse, are pissed off. That's a level of accountability that we need to hold them to, so they don't slip around and give us the okey doke once more, not responding to how the building codes, the building construction liabilities are being, the construction policies are being accorded to. They need to be held accountable first. Then we hold the mayor accountable. What happens in Boston, for example, does not happen in Atlanta. There's so many Black millionaires in Atlanta, Taylor, around real estate, around construction. The Black community in some ways helped build that airport named after Jackson, right? Because the Black people in that city held Maynard Jackson accountable around race, around economic equity. And those contracts that were handed out in the 70s and in the 80s under those black mayors created one of the most um, lucrative or prosperous black communities in the country, just around them being held accountable around public policy. Our mayor Walsh and our mayor Menino was not held accountable by the black community, and we got to organize. We got to hold them accountable. Your station, your your ability to impact the minds of your listeners is a way to hold those people accountable. Call Andrea Campbell and ask her why she ordered the lights to be turned off. That's holding her accountable. And the next time she won't do that. She won't do that.
Yo, do me a favor.
Yes.
What time is it? It's
Yes.
12:36.
We've been going a while.
What's the name? Yeah, we went over. We went over, but I think the conversation merits the time. So I'm not worried if you're not worried. If you're good, I'm good. VOG, the truth. Thank you. I would like to go to Medford if anybody wants to take this field trip with me. I'd like to see some slave quarters and a mansion. I absolutely will. We could do that. We could take a field trip. I'll take the day off. We can do that. VOG, you are absolutely right. The Minority Act gives us much worth for one white woman. As a black man and woman is a very gray area. And if you take a look at the numbers, I know that Kevin, you're familiar with the Black Boston COVID Coalition, correct?
Yes, I'm a member of it. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So the Black Boston COVID Coalition was demanding of city officials and of the governor himself, like, yo, all this money that was given to minorities, we want the numbers and we want it broken down. Like, when you say minority, we're not asking about the white woman who's on her husband's business, and because the wife owns more than 50% of the business, it's considered a minority business, but it's a white man's business. We want the numbers of the actual minorities, and that's because the white man didn't want his wife to vote. He didn't want his wife to own land. The white man didn't want his white woman to have a damn thing. So why you think he wanted a Negro to have anything else? So this is why we have what we have currently. And you talking about 3/5 of a person. Why you think the Electoral College exists?
That's right,
because all y'all Negroes got the right to vote, and you were no longer 3/5 of a person. You were a whole person with a whole vote. So we have to go ahead and make this Electoral College so we can win fairly. Because in all things, we cannot win when we are the minority of the world.
Yeah.
So we have to set in place things that make it equal for us.
And I tell you, Dr. Martin, and former Senator Diane Wilkerson and others with Black COVID-19 are doing a great job in terms of accountability. Blacks, 30% of the city's population, 43% of the deaths in the city connected to COVID-19. Incredible disproportionality. Where's the money? Is the money being directed in proportion to the level of suffering is the question around accountability. And Senator Wilkerson and Dr. Martin are doing a wonderful job raising that issue to Governor Baker, raising that issue to Marty Walsh. We don't know what the numbers are. They're kind of hidden numbers. I don't see the evidence, quite frankly, in the community.
And your governor still got how many billion? He got like $700 million left that we're supposed to be actually utilizing for like small businesses, minority businesses.
What is it, 700 million? From the federal stimulus, yes. It's in the hundreds of millions. I don't think it's disproportionately being directed into those communities that are suffering most COVID-19. There is a multi-billion rainy day fund on the state level, multi-billion money that could be used that's just in the bank, where Black communities are suffering disproportionately around COVID-19 and other issues. So that's the level of accountability that you're raising, that Senator Wilkerson and Dr. Martin are raising. That's important. We want to raise the issue around accountability along the lines of race. If we don't answer the race question in the city of Boston, we're going to be suffering for it for a long time. And we got to elect, particularly Black elected officials who have the courage, who have the insight, who have the political imagination to address the issue of race, connected to the fact that that it all originates in the founding of the city, with the founding of the city. It's all connected to the white supremacy expressed by Peter Faneuil. Those things are important to talk about, ruminate about, and then develop some policy responses towards. At the end of the day,
Specifically around businesses.
but we'll be hard pressed to change the spirit and the hearts of people in the city of around race, but we can address the issue of policy. What's the right thing? And you're right, businesses for the Black community are very important. I can't think of any major corner stores in the Black community that are now owned by Black people. I'm hard pressed to find them, to see them. I'm not getting on other people of color. They're entrepreneurs, all that sort of stuff, but you don't find them. We own liquor stores. We don't own liquor stores. We own churches, and we own barbershops and beauty salons for the most part. We don't own essential businesses that serve our community, that brings wealth to Black and brown people. So I get you on the whole entrepreneurial thing. That's part of the issue that we're talking about. Blacks, just on the entrepreneurial, we're talking about numbers, right? An average slave during Peter Faneuil's time was sold at about the equivalent of $7,000 per enslaved person. The average net worth for the Black family is $8. We were worth more economically in slavery in Boston, Black people, than we are now. Ain't that crazy? So just on the economics of it, and I'm speaking to that, real estate accrues to your personal family net worth. And our city councilors don't want to answer that question. The mayor doesn't want to answer that question. We're worth more as slaves. An individual slave was worth 700 more times than a Black family living in Mattapan right now in 2020, over 400 years. Well, we're getting to the 400th anniversary. That's crazy. That is crazy.
Thank you for pissing me off today.
Okay.
Kevin. I greatly appreciate it. But you know what? I'm really thinking. I have a lot of thoughts going on in my head, but I really am thinking of that. The Truth made a joke. You're not Peter's son, but yet we keep our last name.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about like a national movement of Black folks. Like, I'm changing my name. To Kunta Kinte, like to something, to anything that is actually representative of who they are. And I wonder if this is a larger conversation because, Faneuil Hall changing the name doesn't change the history.
No.
But does changing our names change who we are at our core? And so I'm thinking of a lot of things.
It gives us changing our names gives us a different, maybe broader cultural perspective, and that's important to have. I mean, it's one of the reasons why Malcolm X changed his name twice, from Malcolm to from Malcolm Little to Malcolm X, and then Malcolm X to Malik Al-Shabazz, right? He changed his name because his perspective was broadening. One could also have their perspective broaden their perspective politically, ideologically, philosophically, religiously, theologically, without changing their name. I understand why some people would want to do that because it's an affirmation of something other and something different that is important to that person's viewpoint and identity, worldview. But you don't necessarily have to do it. Peter, by the way, as far as I know, is a name that goes back into Greek culture, Dudamos, I believe, which means power. So it doesn't have anything to do with white slave owners, so to speak. But Peter is a very ancient name. So Peter's son means the son of power, Dudamos in the Greek. As far as I've been able to trace.
Oh, so you claiming that one, huh?
Well,
you keeping that one?
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, Lord. Kevin Peterson, New Democracy Coalition. Thank you so much, Jeff. Jeff said if you want to learn more about the Democracy Coalition and how you can join us, please go to the newdemocracycoalition.org. It is a 501c that has been in existence for over 20 years. Kevin, I cannot imagine doing this work. Well, actually, I can imagine doing this work for 20 years and feeling like everything that you have to say falls on deaf ears. No one's paying attention. No one's listening. And it's like little by little, you have one person who buys in and then another person who buys in and then another person who buys in, where like collectively we actually need to buy in together for this to work. And so it's great that Kevin's been doing this work for the last 20 years, but we can't let him do this work on his own. And so how do we get involved? There is a petition. Sign the petition. Tell the mayor that you want the name changed. Call 311. That's it. Don't nobody want to tweet. Don't nobody want to share on Facebook. Call 311. And leave a message for the mayor that you want Faneuil Hall's racist name to be changed, and you want businesses to be inside of Quincy Market because it's owned by the city of Boston, and there's not one black business in 141 businesses. 141 businesses, and not one of them is black owned. Hold on. But is it Asian owned? Is it Spanish owned? Is it a minority that looks like white people owned? Because they'll be like, oh, there is diversity. We have this one Ukrainian.
Yeah. It's I don't know if there are any Asians. Tayla, I even went through Faneuil Hall about 2 weeks ago to look at the the counter staff, those people who are serving the food. There were no black people working there. No visibly black people were working there. No dark-skinned black. They might have been light-skinned blacks, I don't know, that looked near white. But there were no visibly black people working at Faneuil Hall, serving pizza, serving donuts, or wherever they, cheesecake and all that sort of stuff. There's not even diversity among the work staff. That's clear. So not only if it's not black owned, it's not even, there's no black people working there. Now, I remember over the years since we've been doing this, I've had conversations with black people who've worked there, said they never felt comfortable there. That needs to change also. There needs to be something like a Daryl's restaurant or something, bar, and there needs to be some. We got enough creative talent in terms of entrepreneurship in our community in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Hyde Park, to find space, serving food that people from around the world will be interested in. Flames, for example, right?
Well, the truth of the matter is, if we're going to have a real conversation, Kevin, let's have a real conversation. Okay. It's most likely going to end up being like a pop-up shop where smaller businesses that don't have a larger budget to afford a brick and mortar is going to be a pop-up, and then we're going to have to share that pop-up, just like the waterfront. The South End waterfront has a pop-up, and that pop-up is like 300 square feet, and everybody's supposed to take turns 365 days of the year.
But what's unique about Faneuil Hall is that it's a publicly owned facility. Our taxpayers can underwrite the cost of black entrepreneurship in the city of Boston. That's what we're supposed to be doing, creating opportunities. So in a place like Faneuil Hall, we don't have to worry about the market, the private economic market, when city investments could support entrepreneurial infrastructure for communities of color at the marketplace. So that, I heard that from some elected officials. So, we won't be able to get black businesses to sustain themselves. Well, the city will be able to sustain. Just like we have libraries in the black community. We have gyms in the black community. Why? Because the city supports that infrastructure. The city can use taxpayer dollars to support an entrepreneurial economic infrastructure in that place, a publicly owned building. So we could use our imagination around this, Tayla. Our black city councilor, I think it's Kim Janey, who oversees economic development, can think through that question. I know you're looking at me like that, but that's her responsibility. That's her responsibility to come up with scenarios.
Hey, yo, we'll talk about that when you tell Kim to finally call me back, because I've been waiting for about a year and a half for email.
She don't call me back.
We'll wait on that.
She don't call me back. Yeah, she don't call me back.
Yeah, we'll wait on that. Y'all need to vote her the hell out. I'm about to move so I could run in her district. How about that?
If I were in that district, I would vote for you. Let me put it that way.
Gosh, we're coming to the top of the hour. I'm so annoyed. Like, my soul is just disrupted, and it's not only because of what's going on today and election day.
Yeah.
I think the thing that, really quickly, because we are coming to the top of the hour, Kevin, I think the thing that annoys me the most is the fact that every time we have a conversation about making sure that businesses are sustained, we always have to go back to some sort of, what's it called? What is it called when milk has subsidy? Like, I hate the fact that every time we talk about black business, it always is like, but we can subsidize with government funds.
But Taylor, the black bodies has subsidized the development of the city of Boston for almost 400 years, beginning with slavery. That's what reparations is about. That's for real. The black community, nationally and locally, has been subsidized by black labor and effort and their exploitation. So when you come, so we're not asking for welfare, we're asking for justice through the vehicles of public administration. We're not asking for subsidies. Reparations is justice. It means to repair what you've broken. So for 480 years, you break down the capacities of the black community to subsist on its own economically, in some way spiritually and culturally. You break that down over 400 years, nearly 400 years, which is equivalent to 8 to 10 generations. You institutionalize laws and public edicts that destroy the ability to subsist, to own homes. And then when the victim of that, over 380 years, asked for repair, they want to call it welfare or subsidy, when in fact it's justice. That's how I see it. I get your point, but that's how white people will get you sometime on the language. Oh, you're asking for subsidies. You don't deserve subsidy. Well, what did you do in order to get your advantage? That's what Malcolm would say, right? You put a knife in my back 12 inches, you pull it out 4 inches, and you say that's justice. No, you just got 8 inches of the knife still in my back.
We have been blessed to have Counselor at Large Julia Mejia join us.
There you go. There you go.
Real senior counselor.
What's going on, baby mama?
She's coming on.
Sure, yeah.
Your show must be lighting it up. People are responding. Or my text.
I don't play games with grown folks. I don't play games with children either, but I don't play games with grown folks when I get taxed out my ass, and at no point in time do you want to listen. The mayor, I had put out a love letter for the mayor. The love letter included real tears because he pissed me all the way off. And I have yet to get a response. And so, yes, tell the mayor I said call me. Tell Kim Janey I said call me. Everybody else can pick up the phone and say, Tayla, you a little bit too much for me. But the callback is real. And so I'm waiting for Kim and for Marty so we can have an adult conversation.
Did we lose Julia?
We did lose Julia.
Okay. Hopefully she'll come on. She has an announcement to make. I won't make it on her behalf. She has something to say. I think she's coming on about Faneuil Hall. So I'll let her do that when she comes back on. But she's been.
We got 4 minutes, so I don't know when that's actually gonna happen because we literally got 4 minutes before we lose her. And so what we might have to do is, so she's in the council meeting and they have 15 minutes of the council meeting left and we have 4 minutes. And so time just isn't going to allow us to permit on this wonderful Wednesday unless somebody call me and tell me that we could stay on because ain't nobody in after us. She over here saying, she said, hey, yo, tell him to meet me by the bus stop. No, I'm just joking. He said, tell him to wait. Where Danielle at? Hot sauce. Can we please continue this conversation? I'll play some music until Julia comes on. I really do want to. I want to fulfill this all the way. And then he can go ahead and send me Kim Janey's number. We can call her up. We can call Andrea Campbell up. I want real life today. I would like for us to see democracy in real life. So if I don't get no damn justice or peace when it comes to the presidential election, at least I can have some damn justice or peace in my own city.
So the challenge is really for the city, your listeners and others, aside from the elected officials, to really sort of focus on an agenda for the community that pushes against the white supremacy. People say that's a harsh term. Why are you using white supremacy? Why are you using systemic racism in your rhetoric? And the
Is
words
this the truth? Because it's facts? Because you don't like to hear the truth? It hurts. I know. But swallow this pill.
Yeah. I'm a reverend, and the clergy is totally sort of avoids me now because I use the word white supremacy, because there is a connection between, as you might imagine, the city hall and the black clergy, and there's trade-offs in terms of resources from City Hall to black churches. You know that. So when the mayor is challenged around these things, and I'm not the only one who's challenging the mayor around race and inequity, but I've lost friends in the clergy who said, Kevin, you raised the issue, you framed it well, now just get a sit at the table and you can be a part of the decision makings or however they do the business in the city of Boston. And I've said, no, it's more important for us to frame the discussion so that others benefit. I'll tell
so
you
ain't playing fairly, Kevin. That's what it is. They want you to play by their game. They want you to come to the table how they want you to dress, how they want you to act. They want you to go to debutante school and sit at the table and act accordingly. And you're like, I'm not for this business. Like, we're gonna do this for everyone.
And I've been blessed. I've come out of a poor family out of Philadelphia. I've gone to college. I've gone to graduate school. I got a honorary PhD not too long ago. Doctors, right? So I've been blessed. I live in a middle class. I live a middle class life, and it would be easy for me to be at that table. I know how to speak their language, right? But it ain't right. It ain't right. My father always told me the story. One, he said, everything in life about your life, Kevin, is going to revolve around race. But he also told me some personal stories. One, that in the city that he grew up in, South Carolina, Georgetown, South Carolina, black people couldn't drink Coca-Cola. They had to drink Pepsi in public. If they were caught drinking Coca-Cola, they would be insulted by white people because Coca-Cola was the white man's drink. That's the kind of mentality my father grew up. I feel bad about that, right? My father had to walk, you probably heard this, my father had to step off the sidewalk when white people were walking down the street in Georgetown, South Carolina. So,
I'm gonna tell you right now, on purpose, I walk in the middle of the street in 2020 on purpose.
Why? So there's much to fight for, and I thank God for my blessings. But I know the country has incrementally gotten better, just based on my father's story. I want to make it a little better before I leave here. So I'm not interested in sitting at the table among that small minority of black people who get the contracts, who get the access to the mayor, who get the access to the governor, and that's all they get. They don't get anything for the larger community.
So for those that are tuned in, we are live with Kevin Peterson. We are coming to the end of the show. Candy Rain is up next, and so we're going to go ahead and close out the radio portion and before I get a confirmation about Facebook. So if we can keep the Facebook Live going, we will. But as far as actual radio is concerned, we got to let y'all go. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you so much. I'm so sorry you got to miss out on this, but Candy Rain is a dope-ass DJ, and so I hope y'all enjoy that all the way from Georgia. She is live, and she is up and now. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. Everything Tayla Andre, Tayla Andre. Mwah. So that's for radio. I'm getting confirmation on whether or not we can stay on live, so we can go ahead and get Julia on here. As soon as I get confirmation, I will let you know, because at 12:54, she said 15 minutes will be done.
Okay.
And so we got 10 more
minutes.
minutes.
What you will talk about is what you just, Councilor Mejia just sent out over the internet. I believe it was through Facebook. She filed a piece of legislation this morning that looks at the lack of black-owned businesses in the Quincy marketplace. So she's calling for a hearing. And Taylor, I don't think this is disconnected to your program this morning, right? I knew it was coming, but it wasn't scheduled to come out today. But she just sent a press release out, I think, that has the legislation calling for a hearing, talking about racial disparities at the Quincy marketplace and the lack of black and brown businesses. So she's on it. That doesn't get to the big.
Hallelujah.
So it moves the ball down the track. There are so many other issues around disparity in the city around race, but there is a city councilor who's only in her first term, so she's new to the game, so to speak. But she stepped up, and this piece of legislation is within her committee, so she has the ability to pull it up and hold a hearing at any time. So I think this is going to happen. It's a long overdue. We need more black businesses, brown businesses at Quincy Marketplace. Now we got to get to the other issues. So I'll stick around and wait for her to come on, and she can talk in detail around her legislation. But this is good news.
I'm trying to look for this so I can go ahead and read what you're saying.
Okay. What if I just forward it to you?
Yes, please. You can forward everything else while you in that email too.
Okay. Let's see. How do I forward this? I'm sending this by text, this first one. It's a good conversation. Are we still on? People still watching? Okay. I am.
Booked. So Julia came up in conversation while I was on air, and so I went ahead and sent her text messages and emails to see if there was any way that she could come on to, not in a sense defend herself, but it's going to be a two-way conversation, so it wasn't bashing of a person, but understanding both perspectives of the situation. And so she is not booked for today. We do have her booked in the calendar, but it is not for today.
Oh, I understand. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Yeah. Okay.
Council meeting. Yep, completely understand. And so she is, from what I understand, she is going to try and chime in. as soon as the council meeting is finished. And so we are on standby and waiting patiently to see if she does have any freedom. I know Julia, if she has a second, she's going to jump in and jump out. And if not, you know, if she can't, she can't. And so we will wait patiently. And if it's possible, it's possible. And if not, we did our due diligence to make it work.
Exactly. Thank
Okay?
you so much for understanding.
Always.
Have a great day.
You as well. All right, so Kevin just sent this over. This is order for a hearing on expanding access for minority business enterprise into high-volume commercial centers. And so the phenomenon of shopping while black in Boston has been well documented, with an op-ed published by the Boston Globe and the Boston City Council filing a hearing order on the subject shortly after. However, there is reason to examine the barriers put in place, not just for consumers of color, but for business owners of color as well. And while the bulk of black and brown businesses have traditionally been centered in neighborhoods like Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, East Boston, Hyde Park, JP before it was gentrified, Rosendale before it was taken over, every neighborhood benefits from a diverse pool of diverse business enterprise, and the history of residential segregation in Boston has played a major role in the location and success of many black and brown owned businesses in the city of Boston today, and in some of Boston's most famous and storied commercial centers like the Seaport, Newbury Street, Faneuil Hall Marketplace. There's an opportunity to look into ways to make those high volume commercial centers more accessible to entrepreneurs of color. And by means of example, Faneuil Hall has suffered as a result of the pandemic, and much appreciated business needs support through this time. There is an opportunity to revive the business community through investing in black and brown businesses. However, in order to do so, historic emotional barriers such as the idea of setting up shop in areas named after a slaveholder need to be addressed. And
There you go.
reckoning with Boston's economic barriers for entrepreneurs of color means reckoning with the symbolism of the institutions that they are trying to emerge into. And I love this and. There are no buts, and. And we have a responsibility as a city to end the us versus them mentality and build relationships and communities that value and validate the experience of entrepreneurs of colors. Now, therefore, it be ordered that the appropriate committee of the Boston City Council holds a hearing to discuss expanded access for minority business enterprises in high-volume commercial centers. Representatives from the administration, including the Office of Economic Development, as well as advocates from the New Democracy Coalition of Massachusetts, BECMA, and others are invited to take part. Community activists and members of the public are also encouraged to attend. This was filed on 10/30/2020. Exactly. Izza X said, drop the mic. That is my baby mama. So I was completely perplexed when you were like, but Julia did it, because I know my baby mama, and she don't play no games with none of these elected officials. She ain't played no games before she became an elected, and she ain't playing games now that she isn't elected. And so I am so proud of my baby mama. I'm so excited for Julia Mahia. But we still need to get Andrea Campbell on the line, as well as your girl, Kim Janey. And so if you know Kim Janey, tell her to hit me up. If you are a fan of Kim Janey, tell her to hit me up. If you have direct access to Kim Janey, tell her over a year and a half I got emails and receipts. I've been trying to get in contact with Kim Janey. As well as Mayor Walsh.
Mayor Walsh.
Yes, Mayor Walsh. Him.
And Lydia Edwards.
Oh, yeah. Whatever happened to Lydia? Hold on. I think I have Lydia, though. What happened to Lydia?
Well, she hasn't been supported at all. And she yelled at the protesters. I don't think elected officials should be yelling at voters in disrespectful ways.
Lydia is
Public-
her true,
publicly.
authentic self all the time. Do
Well,
I condone it?
well,
I don't condone it, but I do
yeah,
know that
yeah.
she is her authentic self, Monday through Sunday. And tell Marty, you looking for him too, baby? You could.
Well, you don't behave that way if, as an elected official, you treat all voters with respect. You don't yell at them. You don't walk away from them unless they're threatening to harm you. That's not the way that elected officials should be treating other people. I don't expect that behavior from average people. Not to mention elected officials.
Listen, Kevin, I become an
so
elected
she
official.
can
I'm
keep it
cussing
real.
everybody out on a regular basis. So I don't have etiquette. I don't have manners. What's that called? Tact. I lack tact 100%. So I'm just speaking from my perspective. I'm a holler, shout, kick, and scream, and we will be in. I have no problem being in
Why
chambers
she got
yelling
to
at folks.
Why she got to tell me to go get naked? What's that about? I don't know the woman. Never met her. Her imagining about my nudity is beyond the pale of an elected official. I would never, ever think about Counselor Edwards naked.
Okay, I'm done with this conversation. I'm so done with this conversation.
So it's on the tape. I'm not making it up. You'll see it on YouTube.
So I just
where did
want
that come
to,
from?
Kevin, for you, Julia Mahia posted 20 minutes ago.
Okay.
20 minutes ago. Thank you to Kevin Peterson for his partnership as we try to uplift the deep, systematic racism that still exists in Boston. While this public hearing does not address the changing the name of Faneuil Hall, as the chair of small businesses, I hope it will at the very least change who does business in Faneuil Hall and gets us closer to addressing our economic oppression. See below for more information. Today we are introducing a hearing order for, I'm going to just mute all of the police in the background, fire department. Today we are introducing a hearing order for a hearing on expanding access to minority business enterprises into high volume commercial centers. We have a responsibility to build relationships and communities that value and validate the experiences of entrepreneurs of color. She just posted that right now, 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. And that's on the money. Now she should be applauded for her courage. The language is on point. And we're going to have a good hearing around that because that's going to expose the unfortunate underbelly of economics in Boston with regard to race. Now that's just one example. And that's why we're raising this issue, Tayla. We got healthcare disparities. We got public education disparities. We got disparities in terms of hiring for public jobs. The police department is off. The school department, our school teachers. As I said, Counselor, good afternoon. How are you? Okay.
I'm good. I'm here to defend my rights.
My baby mama came
I'm
and
here to
pulled up.
I'm here to conversation.
Okay, so for those who don't know, Julia Mahia is City Councilor at Large Julia Mahia, who took over Ayanna Presley's spot. She won by literally.
Wait, I have the worst internet.
Oh, hold on. It's feedback. As soon as I mute my mic, you'll be good. I know. I hate it. So Julie Mahia is, first and foremost, she's a friend. She is a warrior. Her spirit runs deep. She is for the people. She regards herself as a Black Latin woman, Black first, Latin. Well, I won't say second, but she is a Black Latin woman. And I so appreciate you being here today because we were calling out those that did not want to sign up for the Faneuil Hall name change. And Kevin, you still here, Kevin? So Kevin is still here. I don't know where he is, but he is still here.
I have really
What about now? I'm muting myself. You should be good to go.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out if you can even hear or see me.
I can hear you. And can see you. We are perfectly
I don't even know.
fine.
I don't even know
I can hear you. I can see you. Can you hear me?
which computer are you seeing me on my computer?
You're looking at me right now. Right now you're looking. Yes, now.
Okay, so okay. What's up, baby mama? I missed your whole intro. I'm sure you said how much you love me, and I got some child support payments that I have to make to you and my kids because I've been busy, so I haven't sent you any checks lately. But yes, I'm so happy to be here, to be in your presence today of all days. We know what is at stake. We know how hard we go every single day. And so I'm here for all of it. I mean, I did see you tag me on something on Twitter, and if anybody knows anything about me, I always lean into things. I don't back down. Like, I think when people call me out, I feel like that's inviting me in. So just everybody knows that's how I roll. And then I saw my name being tagged. Oh, what happened? Y'all can't see me now? I don't know what's going on, but anyways, I saw my name tagged on something in regards to the Faneuil Hall name changing, and I wanted to just really, really be clear about what that is. And am I in the show? Everyone can see me? I don't know what's going on.
You're good.
But,
you're so good.
But
you're big up. Everybody can only see you.
Okay, so good. So I just keep slapping my lip, y'all. So I just really wanted to be really clear about the way my office works and how we function. I'm an at-large city councilor. I'm the chair of small business and civil rights. And I'm also on the committee for arts and culture, women and families. And so there's been a lot of conversation around this public hearing around changing the name. And I just want to be really clear that one, while I appreciate the whole notion that anyone could call a public hearing, absolutely. I'm a freshman counselor. I'm still learning how to navigate the politics of the politics. And I want to be really intentional of how I utilize my political power and whatever little I have. And so I partnered up with Kevin Peterson to write a hearing order that specifically addresses the fact that there are no businesses of color in Faneuil Hall, and how oftentimes people who feel traumatized for shopping in an area that is named after a racist slave owner. So what people need to recognize within the context of that is it's about strategy, and it's all in how you utilize the space that you have to move an issue forward. So I'm coming here publicly to ask Kevin Peterson and the coalition to recognize, right, that my role is to amplify the voices of the people, and I'm utilizing whatever little influence I have to give them a space to talk about it through the lens and through the chairmanship that I oversee, which is small businesses. And so I did that because it creates an opportunity for us to have uncomfortable conversations. And if we want to get into the matter at hand, in my public hearing order, I also talked about the trauma of the name of Faneuil Hall and the how it impacts Black folks. So I just want to be really clear that if anyone is going to tag me on things, that would come correct with what that looks like. And so I'm not trying to be, snippy, but I just want to recognize what's at stake here. And I would really appreciate folks recognizing what I am trying to do and how I'm trying to move the work forward. Because I don't respond well to accusations that I have not moved on an issue that, to be honest with you, I won in December by a traumatic recount. I was sworn in. We're dealing with a global pandemic and civil unrest, right? So half of my term, the last 8 or 9 months have been under COVID. So forgive me if I have not moved fast enough on the issues that you've been fighting way before I even decided to be a city councilor. But trust that at the very least, while I'm in the seat, I'm trying to do something about issues that have been far too long neglected here in the city of Boston. So thank you.
Booyaka, booyaka. Yo, somebody said spicy. I said, oh, hell yeah. So I'm going to let Kevin respond.
Wait,
Well, I want to say, kudos to Councilor Mejia. We issued a survey last year during the city council hearing around the issue of race, and specifically around the issue of renaming Faneuil Hall, in order to talk about the issue of race in more comprehensive and expansive ways. And Councilor Mejia answered affirmatively to that survey. We published that survey. She said that she thought that race was one of the more important issues in the city of Boston that we should be talking about. And she also said that that she had concerns about Faneuil Hall, and that she believed that there should be a hearing around Faneuil Hall. This legislation that she filed on the 30th, that was introduced, I believe, today officially into the record. So it reflects that interest and reflects her commitment to addressing the issue of race. We've said all along, and Councilor Mejia has heard this, that our effort around Faneuil Hall is just not about symbolism per se. It is a way that we began to talk about disparities along and across communities of color within the city of Boston, disparities that reflect systemic racism and white supremacy. So we're encouraged, and Councilor Mejia, we thank you. We still call on the other city councilors to understand that the city will not move forward without a deep and comprehensive conversation around race. When we have public education disparities, disparities around healthcare, disparities around individual family wealth that is tied into the issue of systemic racism, we can't move forward. And this is the only thing, as I see it, of importance in terms of conversation and policymaking for the city of Boston moving forward. Some want to say, well, housing is the issue. My constituents are talking about housing, but housing is connected to race. Just in terms of the hyper-segregation of neighborhoods and the gentrification of neighborhoods that's based on race. Some of the councilors said, well, my constituents are talking about healthcare, but we can't disconnect healthcare from race when we have health morbidities present within the Black community and communities of color that are expressed along the issue of race. So race
those things to be true.
Saturates in some ways.
Yes, and with all
policy across the board.
So yes, Kevin, all of that is yes, right, and correct.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to be clear that, and which it has been clear. Julia, thank you for clearing that up, because I was completely blown up. For me, I was just like, no, not my baby mama. Like, I know what she stand for. I know what she believe in. Not my baby mama.
That's why I had to come over here and clear my name, because you got to get prosecuted for some stuff that I know. Like, for me, yes, during the campaign trail, I said absolutely, right? Definitely need to change the name. But you have to understand the game and how we play it. And it's really about, how do I utilize whatever little political power I have to move a conversation forward? And I felt like that little piece of the conversation was neglected to be inserted into this. And my internet was on and off, so I didn't get to hear, Kevin, what you had to say in response to any of the things that I said. But I want to go on record and be really clear, right, that I stand, right, with what I said back then, and I'll still say it right now. You all should have every right to do whatever hearing that you want, but you're not going to utilize and put me in a situation that's going to take me away from my priorities, which is economic development and justice. And if I want to talk about it, Faneuil Hall, through that lens, then y'all should be okay with that instead of fighting me.
No one's fighting you. And I did not say that you opposed the name change of Faneuil Hall. I said you hadn't responded to the name change, and that I applauded you. Around a hearing. I'm sorry, a hearing, and I said that I applauded your recent effort in filing this legislation, because it speaks to one of the many issues that needs to be examined around policy with regard to race. So I'm not sure if you're hearing everything I'm saying, but I applaud you. I think it's a first step in terms of examining race in Boston through the lens of economic development and opportunities. But in general, the hearing the call for a hearing around Faneuil Hall is designed, is organized to interrogate the issue around race and how it is connected to public policy, of which business opportunities
Kevin,
at Faneuil
can you do
Hall
me a
is
favor?
one. Yes.
Kevin, I think you, in one of our interactions, you had said to me that Michelle Wu, Counselor Michelle Wu, was leading that and had already been working with your office. Her office has been working with you all on filing that hearing order. And what I said to you is that I'm going to focus on the small business portion of it, because I'm not going to step in somebody else's lane, and that I would be one of the co-sponsors of that hearing order, shall she file it, since she's already done that. So did you also share that with the viewers, that I had already made a commitment that at the very least, since Michelle Wu, Counselor Wu, was leading on that I would at the very least be a co-sponsor of it? Did you mention that?
Hold on, I have to unmute him. And from what I understood, it was, these are the people. So between Julia Mahia, Michelle Wu, and Felix Arroyo, these were the three counselors that were on board for changing the name, but these are the individuals that have not acted via putting a hearing together. So I think that was like specifically, it was just like, well, can anybody do a hearing, or like certain people can only do a hearing? And it was just like, well, because I don't know anything about City Hall, how it works, how you file things or how things work. So I was like, well, maybe she can't file a hearing because it's not her thing. Like, how does it work? And he's like, well, anybody can file a hearing. So I just want to, like, this does not have to be back and forth, because one of the things that Kevin said, and you can go back and watch later, but Kevin was just like, Julia was for it, Felix Arroyo was for it, Counselor Wu was for it, but nobody has taken the initiative to put together a hearing. And so you can be for something, but since you didn't put the hearing together, it was just like, well, how much of an issue could this really be if you're for it, but you're in the background for it and not publicly with a hearing? And so that specifically was the question. But you already put out a document that said, we are going to address the fact that out of 41 businesses, correct? 41, 41?
41.
141 businesses, there's not one black-owned business. And we're done talking about minority-owned business being owned by a white woman as a minority. And then my heart was kind of broken because we just did a whole interview with Andrea Campbell, and she was talking about like black people. And then for her to be the one to have shut off the lights and say, y'all have to go home, we're not having this hearing, back in March of 2019. So that was a little disheartening as well.
Mahia,
so I want to give, I want to give, because my internet is really bootleg. So I heard a little bit of what Tayla said, but I want to answer the question, and I still need some clarity around this, Kevin, is that when we talked about the hearing order for the hearing on the name changing, what you said to me is that Counselor Wu's office had already been in communication with you, and they had already started the filing, and I committed to being a co-sponsor of that hearing. I just want to be clear on that. Like, you had advised me that Counselor Wu had already been working with you on this. Yes or no?
Were in support of it. You were in support of the hearing. But I said that all of the counselors who were in support of it had not yet filed anything. I'm counting on Counselor Wu to follow through on her commitment. As you mentioned, that you said you would be in support of Counselor Wu's hearing order. That's clear, and I appreciate that. But we were not trying to say that you were opposed to a hearing. I simply said that those who said that they were supportive of a name change have not yet filed anything like a hearing. So I'm glad you clarified that. I don't have any,
so I guess what I'm still confused. But Kevin, what I'm still confused about, though, and I need some clarity around, is that you had advised me that Counselor Wu's office was already in the process.
And so
Is that not? That's what I need to know. You had a
I can't hear.
So the question was whether or not Councilor Wu whether or not Julia Mejia was advised that Councilor Wu's office did or did not say that they were going to move forward with the hearing.
Okay. Conversation I had with Councilor Mejia was that when she introduced the idea of filing this particular hearing order that she filed, the conversation I had with her was that Councilor Wu had committed to filing the hearing on the name change, at which point Councilor Mejia said, well, she will be in support of that hearing.
Which, Kevin, this is the first time we're discussing.
Oh, because there was
remember, I was going in on these motherfuckers, and I didn't know that Councilor Wu said that she would file it. When did she say that she was going to file it?
This was over a year ago. I said that they were committed to it, but they had not stepped up to file the legislation for a hearing. That's not a contradiction.
Well, you're right, because it's been a year later. There's still no hearing.
Yeah.
And we're having hearings virtually with Zoom, so we could have a hearing today, actually.
Yeah. And when I spoke to Councilor Mejia, she is correct. I didn't add the nuance of our person-to-person conversation because I don't know if that was private, right? So as we were talking about, Councilor Mejia and I were talking about the hearing, she said, what I'll do is file something that I have control over. So I have control over the Committee on Small Businesses and Enterprise. So I will file a hearing around business access and opportunity at Faneuil Hall Marketplace. I said, fine, we'll take it. I took it back to the group. The group says, yeah, let's support Councilor Mejia on that, because that opens the door in terms of the conversation around Faneuil Hall in general.
Okay, so I'm definitely going to circle back with, again, Kim Janey. Y'all can still have Kim Janey call me. Y'all can still have the mayor call me. And I'm going to go. I went ahead and already reached out to Andrea Campbell's camp via email, as well as Michelle Wu, because I want to see this. New democracy. I want to see new democracy today because we're not seeing new democracy with our presidential election right now. So I need new democracy here in the city of Boston.
I want to be clear for the record and for the tape. So if the councilor wants to look back at it, that she is absolutely right. When we had the conversation about filing for the hearing, I said, well, Councilor Wu said she would take the lead on it. And at that point, Councilor Mejia said, well, I will be in support and co-sponsor that legislation. But for the short term, she's going to file the legislation around Faneuil Hall. And I applaud her on that for her courage. I am not taking away anything from her integrity and from her willingness to step up to the plate, be courageous around the issue, and not dodge the issue like other councilors seem to be doing.
So it sounds like we need to take the smoke because we like 45 minutes over the damn showtime. But it sounds like we need to take the smoke and ask Michelle Wu whether or not she's going to do this before she goes ahead and does her little mayor thing. So the question is on the table for Councilor Wu on whether or not she said she was going to put together this hearing. Councilor Mejia said that she was going to co-sponsor the hearing. And so we just need to find out if Wu is going to follow through.
Well, I'll give you some more details.
We will have to circle back on this on another day because I am 30 minutes late for everything else that I had to plan today. But I wanted to be clear. If Julia was going to pop in, I wanted to hear both sides of the story. And if Andrea would have popped in, if Wu would have popped in, if Arroyo would have popped in, we would have got those questions answered as well. But unfortunately, we have not had time in over 45 minutes. But Kevin, I do thank you so much. And let's revisit this conversation after we get a hold of Councilor Wu, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Edwards, as well as Councilor George. Because Mejia came and she said that she was going to do the damn thing. And if we have to take it out of Wu's hands and put it in Mejia's hands, Mejia ain't running for mayor. And so she's not over here looking for friends. So, I am Tayla Andre. Waking Up with Tayla Andre has nothing to do with the time of day we link up at about waking up your third eye with unorthodox conversations leading to universal consciousness. Thank you so much for coming over time with us. I was like, for me, it's not about, damn, Tayla, you just pulling up. It is about pulling up because if you say you're going to do something and then you don't do it, then I got questions on why you said you were going to do it and you didn't end up doing it. I said I was going to start an OnlyFans and I got an OnlyFans. You got to do what you say and say what you do, period. period. TAYLAANDRE, everything Tayla Andre. I thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. And I hope you have an amazing day. Mwah.